Hi all and welcome back to the Chessable Masters 2020. Today is the last game of the semi-final and I'm going to show you an exciting game between Anish Giri with the white pieces and Ian Nepomniachtchi with the black pieces. In my previous video I showed how Nepo won the great game, but in game 2 unfortunately he blundered in the end game, giving the point back to Anish. Games 3 and 4 of the Rapid and the first Blitz game were all drawn, and if this game will be a draw as well, there will be an Armageddon game to decide. In this game, Anish will be choosing which color he wants to play since he finished top seed or top in his group, which will most likely make him choose the black pieces and giving him the advantage to win. So most likely Nepo will try to win this match. So let's get started. We have d4 by Anish, knight to f6, so we have the Indian game, knight to f3, g6, g3, bishop g7, bishop g2, d5 now. We have castles and castles, c4, and now c6. The Grunfeld defense is on the board. We have queen to b3 and queen to b6 now, knight to c3, rook to d8, bishop to d2, takes and takes on c4, and we have a tempo gainer with bishop to e6, queen to e4, and I just want to show you that it is not very likely to take the pawn because of rook to b1. If you do this, it's just gonna be you're just gonna lose the queen. So instead of taking the pawn, Jan plays bishop f5, just covering this spot. And now rook f to c1. And even now you still cannot take it, because if you take the pawn now, you're still getting, even though you will give temporarily the exchange, the queen is still trapped. So after this, you'll have to give up the queen. So after rook f to c1, and I want to mention that Ian Nepomniachtchi had this position on the board many times last year against Ding Liren, against Mamedyarov, against Karyakin, and against Tomaszewski um, with the black pieces. And he won in one game and he drew 3 games. So this is a position where Nepo feels really comfortable in. So rook f to c1 now. Uh, Knight b to d7 because you cannot take the pawn. b4, knight to e4 now, with the hope of maybe forcing an exchange here and getting this bishop here, so he can thinking about trading the light square bishops off, which will be favorable for Jan because the light square bishop of Anish is very strong. And also with knight to f6, you are attacking the pawn. So Anish played e3 to defend, and now we have takes and takes on c3, and bishop to e4, saying, okay, I'm gonna plant my bishop here, and if you ever move the knight, I'm gonna take your bishop. So we have queen to b3 now, bishop to d5, pushing the queen back to c2. We have knight to f6, and now knight to e5, saying, okay, trade the bishops, but I'll have a strong knight on e5. So takes and takes, and now knight to d5. We have knight to d3, and this knight now is very hard to chase off because there's no longer a light square bishop, and it cannot be attacked from all these positions. Plus, it also defends the b4 pawn. So this is an excellent outpost for the knight, where it'll be very strong and hard to deal with for Nepo. So we have queen to c7 and now a4 expanding on the queen side. We have rook a to c8 and now rook a to b1, saying, okay, maybe I want to push the pawns here. We have h5 now by Nepo and h3 by Giri, and now we have even h4 by Nepo. And this has a little bit of a trick because most players will probably just move their pawns up the board. You know, you don't want to mess up your structure, but it actually runs into knight takes e3, and after you take, the queen will infiltrate your position, and it's just gonna gobble up all these pawns. And yeah, for a knight, black has now is 3 pawns up. So yeah, and that's not something you would want as white. So instead of playing g4, Anish took the pawn on h4. So now the queen g3 is no longer an option. And now bishop to f6. And here, well, this probably wasn't the best move by Nepo. The computer suggests queen to d7, but he played bishop to f6, which kind of forces h5 because there's no way to defend this pawn. So h5, saying, okay, if you want it, you have to ruin your pawns on the pawn structure on the king side as well. But Nepo decided not to take it, but plays g5, and this just gives White actually a really good position because now the pawn structure on the king side is still ruined for Black and for White, but uh, well, White is just simply a pawn up, and it has also options to defend this pawn just with rook of a queen to e2, just defending it. And it will be very hard for Nepo to pick this pawn up. So he plays sorry, Anish plays knight to c5, and we have king to g7. We have knight to e4. The idea is simple, yeah. The knight goes to c5 to e4 to g3, just to to defend this pawn, and Nepo will try with king g7 and get some rooks here to attack the pawn. So you get knight to e4, rook to h8, queen to e2, defending, rook to h6, b5. Now there's no rush to play this move, only when the rooks are doubled. So um, Anish can easily just expand now on the queen side. So rook c to h8, and now just the knight back to g3. And this is a very awkward position where Nepo's pieces are now on the h file, but these both rooks are just stopped by, well, basically just by one knight. So and meanwhile, uh, White is looking very strong here on the queen side. So yeah, Nepo plays e6 just to well, have a nicer structure. We have bishop to d2, and now bishop to e7. So the bishop could retreat from f6 to e7, and maybe it can go to d6, try to attack to get this knight away from white. So we have takes and takes on c6, queen to a6 now, and queen to d8. The thing is, you don't have time to play something like this. If you play this, uh, well, you're just getting wrecked like this. And what you're gonna do here? Probably even best just to give up the queen, and at least you will have some sort of a counterplay now. But it's not looking good for black at all here. So you don't have time to play your bishop here. So Nepo played queen to d8, saying, "Okay, I don't want to have this rook here to come with a tempo." With queen takes c6 and knight back to f6, saying, "Okay, I'm gonna add another attacker to this pawn." And now rook to b7. Um, Now the pawn is gone. Then we have knight takes h5, and now rook to d7. This a clever move, not allowing any tricks here to trade off the queens and free up the rooks. So the queens get booted back to f8 now, and we have d5 by Anish, ready to bust open this position. His queen can come here. We're gonna get incredible pressure here on the 7th rank. And Nepo took the knight on g3. We have takes and takes, and now rook to h3. So finally, there is some counter play by Nepo on the h file, but the question is, will it be in time? Because White's pieces are starting to, pound on the king side. Um, we have bishop to c3, yes, and a deadly attack. And Nepo played king to g6, and just want to show what happens if you block it by something like, f6. Well, then you just get queen to e6, and you don't really have anything here because the king can just go to f3, and there's no more checks. And if you want to, if you want to move out of this position, you maybe want to play king to g6 now, but then you just pick up the bishop, and if you play anything else, well, you maybe you want to defend the bishop. Which is just impossible. So yeah, it's this is just going downhill very quickly. So you cannot really defend it like this. And the bishop here just runs into check here. And after you take like this, takes, the pawn can take, and well, black's position is just horrible. Maybe a queen to a8 now, check with takes and takes, and um, yeah, white even has time to promote here and win a rook, and this is just a completely winning endgame. So since all that is lost, and Nepo really wants to try to keep his attack going, he played king to g6, allowing Anish to take this exchange on h8. And now Nepo has the idea with maybe playing rook to h1, and then sorry, rook to h2, rook to h1. Well, depending on if, for example, if Anish takes the bishop here, it'll just be well, something like this. And if it goes to g3, even it will go here and here, and um, it gives black too much counterplay here, and you don't want to allow this. So Anish very cleverly played, and I hope you can spot it. Yeah. So Anish played a very clever pawn takes e6, and this is very clever because the queen actually covers the h1 square. So now if you give a check, which was played in the game, Anish just puts his kings on g1, and there's no more check here because the queen is covering the square. So Nepo plays f5 just to keep his attack going. Rook to takes e7, and now queen to h3 in a desperate attempt to maybe get a perpetual here, or maybe get a checkmate in. But unfortunately, this just loses, and yeah, white to play and checkmates in, well, maximum of 8 moves. So Anish started with queen to e8. You have king to f6, rook to f7 check, king to e5, rook to c5, king to e4, queen to c6, king takes e3, and after rook e5, it was in this position that Ian Nepomniachtchi resigned the game, and Anish Giri will face Magnus Carlsen in the final of the Chessable Masters. So basically, after this, the king has only one way to go. Well, two, but he has to go on the d file somewhere. So he plays this queen c5 check here, and just game over. So it's yeah, it's a very instructive game. I feel where Nepomniachtchi really tried to force an attack on the king's side, which just wasn't there. And very cleverly, Anish took advantage of all Jan's pieces being on the king's side by pressing onwards to the queen side and finishing the game from there. Very impressive indeed. So I hope you enjoyed this game. I definitely did it. And if you did, please do like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the final.